Thanks for joining me to talk all things workplace learning. My name is Tyler and I'm a past participant of the Workplace Learning Program. Your school Workplace Learning Coordinator is the Southern Region Business Enterprise Centre, who have been contracted by the New South Wales Department of Education and act as the link between the schools and industry. Their role is to arrange and coordinate the work placements, usually 2, you will complete as part of your chosen VET course studies. So, what is work placement? Work placement is a mandatory component of your chosen course, a bit like an assessment. It is practical hands-on industry training within a workplace where you not only learn new skills, but have the opportunity to use the skills you have been learning at school. Work placement is unpaid, however, the experience and opportunities you will gain from a successful placement more than makes up for it. Many students have gained casual and part-time employment from their work placement, and some have even secured apprenticeships. And don't forget, your host employer will make a solid employment referee. Even if host employers were willing to pay you for your time, it could not happen because you are still signed in at school during this time. And because of this, there are insurance arrangements in place by the Department of Education which would be compromised if you were receiving a wage. This is not work experience. Work placement is an opportunity for senior students like you to take your school learned industry skills out into the real world. Are you work ready? Before work placement can be arranged and commence, there are a number of things that first need to occur. The most important thing is you are work ready. Work ready is deemed by your course teacher and identifies that you A, have completed sufficient classwork, B, can demonstrate the skills you have learnt through your course, C, are capable and competently representing yourself and your school within a workplace, D, are reliable, and E, are willing and capable of completing the following process. Planning. This is all about knowing what, who, why, where, when, and how. Things like, why do you have to complete a work placement? Where would you like to complete your placement, or at least the relevant industry sector? When is work placement scheduled on your school calendar? And how are you going to get to and from placement? How you are going to make your current schedule, e.g. part-time work or training, fit around the work placement hours. It pays to be organised. It will make the process a lot easier for you and those involved in the placement, like your parents if they need to drive you. Know your responsibilities whilst on work placement. Talk to your teacher, ask others who have completed a placement. Process. The process begins with your online registration for work placement. The information in the registration is for our organisation so that we can arrange a placement for you with the suitable host and prepare the necessary documents. It is important that you provide adequate information in your registration, including any medical issues or special requirements. The next step is to provide us with your preferred work placement choice. It is okay if you're not sure of employer options because we work with a number of employers in each industry who regularly support this program and your school by hosting students for work placement. We will give you a list of these hosts so that you can choose who you might like to be paired with, unless of course you have your own host contact. Once we have confirmed with your preferred host that they will be available to host you on the date your school has chosen, we will prepare the necessary documents which you will need to collect from your teacher and have completed. This involves calling your host employer to meet with them and collecting all of the necessary signatures. So let's talk a little more about these documents and what you need to do with them. Paperwork. A student placement record is a necessary document that must be completed for each and every placement and student before a work placement can commence. This is an agreement between yourself, your parents, your work placement host, and your school that the placement is to occur, and outlines the dates for this as well as the location and duties you will undertake. Each party involved must complete and sign their section of the document. You will need to check and correct your personal information, sign where it is indicated, and then take the student placement record to your parents to complete, your host after calling them to make a time to meet with them, preferably 1 or 2 weeks before you are due to start. And lastly, your teacher for completion. You will then be given 3 copies, 1 for you to keep, 1 for your parents, and a copy you must give to your host on your first day of work placement. The student placement record looks like this. Remember, if you don't have your paperwork fully completed the week before your placement is due to commence, you cannot attend. Preparation. So, in preparing for your work placement, you arrange to meet with your host employer to discuss the placement and have your student placement record completed. It is important to use this time to ask questions about what to expect, for example, what you should wear, confirm your start, finish and break times, and discuss activities you will undertake. This is extremely important if you are completing a hospitality placement and would like to gather evidence whilst on placement. It is ultimately the host's decision whether or not they are willing to allow this, so now is the best time to clarify. Collect the remaining signatures. Make arrangement for transport to and from your work placement, remembering that some industries will have early starts and some will have a late finish. For example, a hospitality placement might not finish until 11 p.m. and a construction placement might start at 6:30 a.m. Prepare any industry-specific clothing you are going to need to wear, for example, a chef's uniform, steel-capped boots, high-vis shirts, etc. Presentation. Your personal presentation is something you will need to pay attention to for both your first meeting with your host employer, but also each and every day you are on placement. It is true, first impressions do last. So think about how you present yourself. We suggest that for your first meeting with your host employer, you wear your school uniform. Consider personal hygiene. Be sure to shower daily, wear clean clothes and deodorant. Do not overpower yourself with perfumes and aftershave. Consider your work environment and wear your hair tied back if necessary. This is especially important in hospitality. So too are clean fingernails. Check with your host about workplace dress codes. This might include your need to wear black and white, long pants only, or they may even supply you with a uniform. They may stipulate no nail polish or that you need to remove piercings or cover tattoos. It is also generally a good idea to keep jewellery to a minimum. Impressions count. Did you know that it only takes 7 seconds for an employer to form their first impression of you? And it's not always easy to change that impression. Apart from your dress and hygiene, consider how you portray yourself. What attitude are you displaying? Think positive, be positive. It really does show through in how you display yourself. Be responsible for your actions. Anyone can make a mistake, but own what you say and do. Show interest in your work and the instructions you are given, and always show enthusiasm. All of this could make a big difference to the tasks you are assigned or included in whilst on placement, because remember, your host employer has volunteered their time to teach you some skills, and they really won't waste time on someone who acts as if they do not want to be there. Punctuality. An important expectation in any industry and workplace is punctuality. This means that it will be expected that you are at the workplace and ready to commence work at your designated start time. To arrive exactly at the start time or a little later is not acceptable. In most workplaces, you will need to put your belongings and maybe lunch away prior to starting, or you may even need to change into a uniform. Therefore, you need to allow yourself enough time to do these things prior to your start time so that you are ready to commence at the designated time. This is the same for breaks. You will be expected to not commence your break until the stipulated time and to have returned to the workplace and ready to recommence at the time stipulated as the end of your break. The same will go for finish times. You will be expected to finish at the finish time and then collect your belongings before leaving the workplace. To finish before your finish time will generally not be acceptable. And look, things can happen, so if you are running late, contact your host employer and let them know. This also applies if you are sick and cannot attend. Contact your host immediately and advise them, and then contact the school to let them know as well. If you do not attend your workplace as arranged and expected, the host will likely cancel the rest of your placement and you will need to return to school. The hours you did not complete will then need to be completed elsewhere. Under these circumstances, the arrangement of that catch-up will be your own responsibility. Participation. Being a willing participant in assigned workplace activities will not only give you the opportunity to learn new skills, it could make all the difference to the tasks you are assigned. So, show some enthusiasm and remember to smile. Demonstrate a good work ethic by always doing your best. That's all anyone can expect. And showing respect for your host and co-workers. Never be afraid to ask for help or further instructions. It is more important to ask what you are not sure of or to seek help than to get a task or an instruction wrong. Show interest in what you are doing and when you are receiving instructions or assistance. Display positive body language and have realistic expectations. Remember, you are experiencing your trade environment, which includes first, second, third, and fourth year apprentices. And while we hope you will have the opportunity to learn some skills from all levels, including your host, a qualified tradesperson, in reality, you are not yet at your first year apprentice level. Personal practices. Remember to be conscious of your personal practices while in the workplace. You are on display. You need to conduct yourself as you are expected to at school. So remember, no smoking, no mobile phones unless you have your host's permission to use it, no family and friends. People visiting you at your workplace are a distraction to you and those around you. Keep personal social interactions for outside of working hours. No swearing, even if your co-workers are doing it. Personal safety. Whilst it is expected that your host employer will provide you with a safe working environment, personal safety is also your responsibility. So keep yourself safe by using all personal protective equipment supplied or required for a particular task, for example, safety glasses, gloves, steel-capped boots, etc. Being aware of your surroundings and workspace and report anything you consider dangerous to yourself or others in the workplace. For example, frayed electrical cords or a slippery floor from a spill, etc. Ensuring you do not operate any machinery that you have not been trained to operate, for example, forklift, and never operate anything you have not been instructed to. Not undertaking any task that is deemed to be a prohibited activity even if you are instructed to. Your host has been made aware of these activities and you would be familiar with them through your course studies. These include things like working on a roof, working with asbestos, service of alcohol, etc. In keeping yourself safe in a workplace, it is important that you advise your teacher or school contact and your parents immediately if you are feeling uncomfortable in your workplace due to any form of harassment or feel uncomfortable completing tasks that you have been instructed to do. Work health and safety. You will have worked through and discussed workplace work health and safety in your course studies, which must be completed before you attend work placement. For construction students, you must also have obtained your white card before you can attend. Your host employer will provide you with a site-specific WH&S induction on your first day of placement, which will include things like what to do if there is an emergency, safety rules that must be followed, protective equipment that is available, and when it must be used. As previously discussed, you must report any risks or hazards to your supervisor. Your teacher will provide you with an emergency contact card which you must carry at all times in case there is a workplace accident or injury. If you were to get injured, you must first seek medical attention, notify your emergency contact, and notify your school. Work health and safety is everyone's responsibility. Privacy. Confidentiality is an expectation in every workplace. Most host employers will have you complete a confidentiality or non-disclosure statement, which is contained in your student journal, or they may have their own form for this to be completed at your pre-placement interview. Workplace confidentiality is not sharing any information you have obtained in the workplace with others. This could include things like personal information you have seen in a database, or maybe a restaurant menu or recipe. It may also be personal details about your host employer or co-workers. A breach of confidentiality is serious and in some cases could be grounds for legal action. If during your placement you are unsure of obligations with confidentiality, speak with your host or check with your teacher. Communication. As with most things, communication will be the key to a successful placement. You must contact your host employer if there are any changes to your attendance, such as running late or you are sick. You must also keep your school informed, and if you do miss a day and have arranged to make up your missed hours. Keep your host employer, your school and your teacher's contact details handy at all times. And remember, always be conscious of your own personal safety. Never carry out a task which may be dangerous to you, other workers, or members of the public. And immediately contact your teacher if you feel uncomfortable while on work placement. And have fun. Good luck.